What's up, y'all? Oh, starting my day, but wanted to get on here. So yesterday, Ashlee Marie Preston posted a response to a comment that someone made regarding Elliot Page coming out as trans. In the comments, Elliot Page is an actor who starred in Juno, stars on The Umbrella Academy. And they came out as trans yesterday. And the comment was from someone who was proposing that lesbians were losing a role model, or, and losing another member of the community. And Ashlee Marie Preston posted how trans men are not confused lesbians. And it was, and it turned into a really fruitful conversation. One, it became a really interesting conversation about whether or not, about the term lesbian and its relationship to gender identity, right? Lesbian being about sexual orientation. Transness being about gender identity, and the ways in which non-binary people often get erased inside of this conversation. And it ended up being a very interesting conversation. And I suggest you go to Ashlee Marie Preston's Instagram thread to read up more about it, because it was really powerful. What I commented underneath the post when I read it was that I found the comment heartbreaking, because it was born of such a scarcity mindset. And what I said is that no one loses anything when anyone decides to step into the fullness of themselves. There is no way for the world to lose, ever, when we decide to step into the fullness of who we are. And what I wanted to talk about was the scarcity mindset that lives inside of that, and the relationship of that scarcity mindset to a system of body terrorism that lives inside of white supremacist delusion, that lives inside of capitalism, that lives inside of cis heteropatriarchy, right? Inside, and very specifically right now, I want to relate it to the ways in which capitalism gets encoded into our social understandings, right? Because the inside of that comment was the idea that, like, lesbians will become extinct as a result of trans identity. And again, that comment is an act of erasure, because it assumes that transness doesn't exist inside of lesbian identity, and that is incorrect. But it also assumes that somehow there won't be enough, right? The statement comes from there not being enough. It comes from the belief that there is not enough, and that in order for you to be the fullness of you, I must lose out on something. And what I want us to do is to challenge that thinking at every turn. Every time we see it operating in the way in which we move in the world. Every time we think that if someone else has, becomes, or does, it must mean that we will have, become, or do less. Every time we are in a relationship with our own world from a space of comparison in which someone must be higher or lower, lesser or greater than, we are inside the system of body terrorism. That is the system of bodily hierarchy. Because in this person's comment, what they're saying is that this identity is only as rich as the numbers of people who have it, right? Are the numbers of people who share that identity, and not rich based off of the fullness of people getting to be themselves. And inside the LGBTQ I want to make sure I always include all the letters. Inside the queer community, there is a deep indoctrination into this system of scarcity, into this belief that there is not enough. And I understand that, because when you're inside of a community that is already marginalized, that is already oppressed, the experience can absolutely feel like there isn't enough. And every time I lose something, I'm losing ground, right? But what I'm asking us to do is reorient our experience of enoughness outside of a system of capitalism, outside of a system of white, cis, hetero, capitalist patriarchy. Because if we can orient our understanding of ourselves outside of that system, then what we actually do is we remove the boundaries that are inherent in that system, and then we become vast. And that is actually what it is we're being invited into. The opposite experience, right? The opposite experience of marginalization is liberation. If liberation is vastness. It is the expanse to be whatever it is that we desire to be. And so if you are not in the orientation of your world seeking for people to be the most vast and expansive versions of themselves, then you are inside the system of oppression. Then your mindset and your worldview are inside of bondage, inside of these systems of bodily hierarchy, inside of systems of marginalization. And so notice today, inside your own world, where you are operating from scarcity, from a not enoughness, from a belief that somehow your little piece won't be protected. Because the only way, again, to practice liberation so that we might recognize it as a destination in the external is to practice it in the internal. To be living liberation. To be living it as an everyday act inside of ourselves. And so, where is my thinking not liberated? Got to get into that question for yourself. Where is my thinking inside of marginalization? And what would I need to shift in order to liberate my thinking? Because that comment was inside of marginalization. It was moving in the world through the scarcity born out of oppression. And the first and most powerful way to interrupt that system is to interrupt it inside of ourselves. So I invite you all to go check out the thread. It was really, really interesting. And more than anything, I invite you to remember that it is impossible to lose anything in a world where people become more vast. That is only an additive process. The more vast we become as individuals, the fuller we become into our own selves, the fuller we create the world. That's what I want. Bye, y'all.